All right, so I'm back for part 3 of the 2024 pickup series. When the year started, I had 35 games for Dreamcast. I already had most of the big system defining first party games that you expect to see in a library. These probably are the only two really essential pickups I had for the year. I bought these in 3 batches, which is why they're arranged the way they are. The first batch I bought locally in June 17th. I bought all 3 of these at the same time. So in terms of prices, I paid $10 for this game's called Redline Racer. The Suzuki branding is a rebrand of a Japanese game. I bought Suzuki Extreme Racing for $10, Namco Museum for $13, and Silent Scope also for $13. All these games are in decent shape. So the problem with Dreamcast games for me is spine fading. Out of these 3, Suzuki probably looks the worst, but they all look fine. They don't stand out on the shelf as being completely trashed. So Redline Racer is a completely average, run-of-the-mill racing game on Dreamcast. There are a lot of them. It's playable. It's okay. Namco Museum. So there are a bunch of versions of this game that are on a bunch of systems that are all basically the same. I had this game on Game Boy Advance. The GBA version only has 5 games. I think it's missing the original Pac-Man. I was actually kind of interested in getting this just because I wanted a better way to play these games on a TV, on a CRT, or on my CRT, I guess. Pretty happy with that find. Probably not something I would have ordered on eBay. I didn't want it that badly. And then finally, Silent Scope. This is an interesting sniper game. It's kind of like a first-person shooter. Or it's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like a light gun game, except it doesn't have, I actually don't know if it works with the Dreamcast gun, but it wouldn't work well anyway, because you have to zoom in constantly. Interesting game, definitely would be, I assume it would be better in the arcades with the actual sniper gun peripheral, but an interesting addition nonetheless. I think this series is also on PS2, maybe. Obviously, I'm way more interested in the Dreamcast version. So those were all early June pickups, or mid-June pickups, locally. The next group of games I bought online throughout late June and early July. These are all launch games. They were all bought for my launch 25th anniversary project that I was working on for September. House of the Dead 2 and Hydro Thunder were the 2 that I was actively looking for, because these are sort of important launch games. I felt like I needed to have them, and I just stumbled upon a copy of Tokyo Extreme Racer while I was looking that I was happy with the price and condition. All right, so I bought Tokyo Extreme Racer on June 27th for $18. It's in pretty good shape. This is another fairly run-of-the-mill racing game on Dreamcast. This has a career mode, I guess is what you would call it, that's actually sort of interesting. The modern review terminology would be that it has RPG elements, which I think is kind of a bogus way to describe that, but it has progression, I guess is how I would actually describe it without using terminology that I don't particularly agree with. So buy cars, tune cars, that kind of stuff. I imagine that at launch this would have been probably the most meaty racing game there is. Hydro Thunder is really fun, but there's no long term to that game. Like there's not even a. I'll talk about Hydro Thunder more when I get to it. But if you wanted a racing game that was fun for more than 30 minutes at a time, this is probably your best bet at launch. All right, next up, House of the Dead 2. This is a Sega published game, light gun game. So in the US, Sega did not release their gun, their official first party gun or light gun, for reasons that I won't mention specifically, just in case YouTube's algorithm and voice recognition for some reason flags that. But there was an incident in the United States shortly before the launch of the Dreamcast that convinced Sega of America not to release their first party gun. And Japanese guns do not work with an American Dreamcast. So this game is kind of hampered by third party guns. I don't have a third party Dreamcast gun. I have a Saturn gun. And I'm sure there's some way to use a Saturn gun with a Dreamcast with an adapter, but I haven't messed with it. So I've only played this with a controller. It's pretty difficult with a controller. I don't think House of the Dead is as good as Virtual Cop, but it's basically the same basic mechanics. Sega just repurposing one series to make another one. Or let me say that a better way. Repurposing the idea and basic assets of one series to make a second one. And finally, Hydro Thunder. Oh, I didn't say what I paid for that. I paid $18 for Tokyo Extreme Racing on June 27th. I paid $30 for House of the Dead on June 28th. I actually bought that from Mercari, not from eBay. And then finally, on July 8th, I paid $30 for the hot new version of Hydro Thunder on eBay. This game famously had all the Midway games had some printing issues at launch. So the original print of this game is actually on a blue disc. The documentation as to what is different between the two prints is not super great online. Some stuff said that basically it was nothing major, so I could have gotten the original print, which usually I would prefer, but I played it safe and got the hot new version. Hydro Thunder is a fun arcade racing game. My issue with this is probably the definitive way to play Hydro Thunder at home. It's better than the PS1 and N64 versions in terms of presentation. My issue with the game is that it's literally just the arcade game. There's not even a way to play a series of races, as in like what would be called a Grand Prix in Mario Kart terms, or a season or anything like that. You play single events. It's literally just like you have an arcade machine set on free to play mode. I think that the gameplay is great. The replay value, I should phrase that more carefully. The game has great replay value. You can pick it up and play it for 30 minutes at a time, probably forever. It has very poor single play longevity, I guess is what I'm trying to say. After I've played a handful of races, whether that's 3, 5, 10, whatever at the time, you've pretty much seen all there is to see in the game for that play session, and then you turn it off for a few months and play it again. I think the game would have benefited a lot just from some minor tweaks in the way the game was set up. Midway didn't even have to significantly redo anything in the game. They just had to restructure what was already there into something more palatable for a home experience. And I think this game would have been significantly improved. Or this release of this game would have been significantly improved. All right, my final haul here for the year. I bought in September locally. I bought all 4 of these games at the same time. Let's do prices first where I don't forget. I paid $5 for MTV Skateboarding, paid $9 for 4x4 Evo, $5 for Championship Surfer, and $15 for Alien Front Online. All right. MTV Skateboarding, this is a bad Tony Hawk clone. Not a good game. Why did you get it? It was $5. The case is not in the greatest shape, but this isn't a game that I super care about. There's a crack there. I have played it. It is a bad Tony Hawk clone, and I don't particularly love the Tony Hawk series the way a lot of people do anyway. 4x4 Evo, for the 3rd time in this video, this is a perfectly fine, fairly generic Dreamcast racing game. This is an off-road racing game. I think it's a little on the difficult side, but maybe I just have not figured out how to play it yet. I am usually pretty decent at racing games, and this one did not click with me immediately like most do. Next up is Championship Surfer. This is something that I never would have bought, just like MTV Skateboarding, had I not found it for $5. It is a Dreamcast game, and for that reason, I'm interested in having it at the right price. There's a crack in the case there. Again, this case isn't in the greatest shape, but it's not a game that I'm super worried about. Obviously, these are just standard jewel cases, so one day when I get some high quality replacement empty cases, might change these out. This game is probably just that I didn't care enough to put the time in to really learn how it works, but I found it extremely difficult to ride a wave even for a single run in this game. Like, standing up on the board seemed difficult to me. Not a good game. And then finally, Alien Front Online. This is a Sega published game, so of course that ramps the interest up. This is actually one of the first games to ever, or first console games ever to have online voice chat. This is a team-based vehicular combat game, I guess is how I would describe it. Online is in the title, so as you would expect, online multiplayer is a big part of the game. I cannot experience that because I don't have a DreamPie. There is no online or offline split screen. What I have played is the single player stuff. There's actually a full campaign, which I was a little bit worried about because I did not know how much single player stuff there was when I bought this. But there is a full campaign. I believe you can play as both humans and aliens, so I think there's actually 2 campaigns. And then there's also a pick up and play arcade mode. So actually not a terrible single player experience, but obviously for contemporary audiences, the real reason to buy this game would have been the online multiplayer combat. So those were my Dreamcast pickups for 2024. I will quickly go through dates and prices one more time just to make sure I have everything. I bought all of these games on the top row on June 17th locally, and I paid $10, $13, and $13. The middle row were eBay and Mercari pickups in late June and early July in preparation for my Dreamcast launch stream for the 25th anniversary of the American launch. Paid $18, $30, and $30 for those 3. And then finally, the bottom row, I bought all at one time on September the 23rd. I bought them locally, and I paid $5, $9, $5, and $15. Also, not the craziest year for Dreamcast pickups. There are a few standouts here, things that I'm really glad that I have, particularly House of the Dead and Hydro Thunder. Those are really important early Dreamcast games.